Did you ever feel like you got stage fright when you knew you were going to have to talk to someone with dementia? Maybe you're someone who has to visit a distant relative, or perhaps you work with a loved one every day who has dementia. Regardless, it can be difficult when you're faced with this task. After all, the person doesn't live in the same reality, doesn't say the things that make sense to you, and has unpredictable reactions to the things that you say. I'm making this particular video because it's the information I wish I had had when I was 16 years old and scared to death to travel across New York State to visit my grandmother. I had no idea what I would say or how I would cope with seeing her have Alzheimer's disease. I was about to go off to college and things got busy, and those made for really convenient excuses to give in to my fear. I didn't see my grandmother again before she passed away, and I wonder if I would have had I known these techniques we're going to talk about. So let's get down to it. The pros absolutely do have secret tips for communicating with people who have dementia. You can figure it out yourself if you really want to spend the time in grief, or you can watch the rest of this video. Personally, I'd recommend the latter. Professional caregivers use these tips to make everyday life easier on themselves and on the people they care for. And by the end of this video, you'll have a few new tools to improve your communication too. Communication tip number 1. Slow down and keep it simple. Remember, dementia affects the language centers of the brain, so it takes longer to process spoken language than it might have taken the person in their younger years. Also, longer words with more syllables or words that are more rare may be difficult for someone with dementia to process. Use a more simplified vocabulary to be understood more fully. For instance, I might say that a piece of writing was short rather than calling it abbreviated or condensed. For this tip, it's a best practice to make sure the person understands each sentence before you move on to the next one. Have you got that? Communication tip number 2, limit or eliminate choices. I have a hard enough time deciding what to watch on Netflix. Now, imagine having dementia and being expected to make decisions about scheduling the day, food choices, clothes to wear, social events to attend, etc., etc. Instead of giving someone with dementia a buffet of choices, it's much more productive to give 2 choices. Would you like the red shirt or the blue shirt? As opposed to laying out every shirt in the person's closet. As dementia increases confusion and agitation, you can start eliminating choice where possible. You might say something like, "It's Tuesday and you always wear your blue shirt on Tuesday. Arms up." Of course, if the person asks for the red shirt, then it's Red Shirt Tuesday. Remember that this is about eliminating confusion, not limiting the person's freedom or ability to express themselves. If you're visiting someone with dementia, try to blend into the routine. Avoid injecting too many different choices. If the primary caregiver says it's Blue Shirt Tuesday, it won't help to disrupt the routine by saying, "But Grandpa, you always wore green shirts on Tuesday. Why don't we do that?" Routine is the friend of people who have dementia as well as their caregivers. If you're visiting, let your presence be unique, but try to honor that person's needs by not changing things up or disrupting the normal flow of care. Communication tip number 3, be an active listener. One of the best things you can do to communicate with someone who has dementia is to just shut up and listen. Most people want to be heard. If you're nervous about what to say, spend time listening first. Ask questions and let them talk for as long as they'd like. If they say something that doesn't make sense to you, you don't have to say anything. If they say something incorrect, remember that it's correct to them and you don't have to say anything. Recently, my mom told me that she just found out that her parents died last week. Remember the story that I told you in the beginning? I was 16 when my grandmother developed Alzheimer's disease. Both of her parents passed away over 30 years ago. Now, I could have told her that and really confused things, but instead I validated the grief that she was feeling by simply saying I was so sorry to hear that. Then I asked her to tell me some stories about them. She relived memories and eventually started smiling again. As the person with dementia is talking, use those little bridging questions to help the person continue talking. Really? How did that make you feel? What happened then? Why do you think that was? The goal when you're actively listening is to give the person room to speak comfortably and to feel heard. The goal isn't for you to speak and be understood, but to afford that opportunity to someone else. When you think about the people you love to talk to, you probably think of really good listeners, people who reduce your anxiety and make you feel like you're valued by listening to you. It's not different when you're talking to people with dementia, but some of the tactics for doing that are. As you practice the techniques in this video, you'll get closer and closer to mastering them and have better and better communication. If this video was helpful for you, give it a like and consider subscribing to get more updates like this all the time.